Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May. Good evening and welcome, everybody. And how about roll call, please?
Yes, all right, here we go. Commissioner Barnes.
Here.
Commissioner Skovich is absent. Commissioner Tantillo.
Here.
Commissioner, or Chair Costello.
Here.
Commissioner Sveska.
Here.
Commissioner Lucente.
Here.
And Commissioner Minchell.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Okay, if everybody would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first thing, we need to approve the minutes from last month's meeting. Has everybody got a copy and had a chance to review? Are there any comments or corrections?
I have one comment. Section 2B, the last sentence. Andy, I know we mentioned it at the end of this one page, but could we mention something about color schemes and brick and wood trying to be matched as much as possible? We do address it as number 1 here under the last, but is it possible just to mention it up top?
Mention it. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Mention it where?
So the first paragraph describes all the concessions that they're willing to make, but it doesn't address their willingness to look at color schemes, brick and wood matches. But we do mention it down at the end, color palette and materials to coordinate with proposed car wash retail. So I was just asking if it could also be mentioned up top.
Okay, yeah. So in that case, I think you just make a motion to amend the minutes with that phrase, and then the commission will have to vote on that.
Okay, well, I make a motion to amend the notes.
Can you specify how it should be amended?
I think, yeah, so
Just the color palette materials?
Color schemes, brick, wood, all the material, building materials. It's similar to what number 1 is on below, but I just don't want to lose. I just asking for another mention, that's all.
I would recommend Commissioner Tantillo making the motion to amend the minutes to add the color schemes, brick and wood to the end of the first paragraph. I think you should make that motion, and then somebody would need to second that.
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion for the amendments on the notes.
Would anybody like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Quick question, if I was not at the meeting last month, I abstained from voting about this, right? Technically?
It's up to you, but
Because I wasn't there?
yeah, it's really up to you, but yeah.
I mean, there are still 4 members of the commission who were present, so if they all vote aye, it still passes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Then in section C, paragraph 4, I'd like some mention of retaining the 4 EV spaces that were originally spec'd out. So I'll make a motion to amend the notes to allow for an addition to the content to add the EV 4 spaces to that paragraph.
All right, will someone second that motion? We can add that in.
I'll second that as well.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Good, okay. Any other comments or questions, corrections? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Yep, I'll go ahead and make that motion to approve the minutes as amended, please.
And second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to approve the minutes from the April meeting. Okay, let's see. So our next order of business is the petition for the property at 11326 Arrowhead Trail for a variance. Do we have a petitioner present?
We'll need a motion to open the public hearing.
Of course. Thank you. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
And second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to open the public meeting.
All right. I'll introduce this one really quick. So we have a petitioner with us tonight, Ronald Durso, on behalf of his mother, who he has power of attorney over, Dorothy Durso, for the property at 11326 Arrowhead Trail. And he's requesting or petitioning for a variance in order to build an addition that would go 5 feet outside of the buildable area in the rear yard. And staff is recommending approval of this variance for a couple of reasons, but the primary one being, and I'll give a little background right here for some of the new commissioners, is when you have a variance, it's basically permission to break the rules or permission to not follow the guidelines that the village zoning code sets forth. In this case, you have a buildable area, which is the amount of your lot that you're allowed to build a structure on. And this gentleman is petitioning to build a little bit outside of that 5 feet. Staff is recommending approval because the property in question is zoned R1. However, the property square footage is only 11,000 square feet. According to the village code, R1 properties should be 20,000 square feet. This is unfortunately something that's emblematic of some of the downsides of our village zoning code. We have a lot of properties, Arrowhead Trail, there's also Osceola Trail, that their homes are technically not compliant with the zoning code. Whether it's the fact that they're 10, 11, 15,000 square feet and they really ought to be 20,000 square feet, or if the setbacks are not setbacks are not what they ought to be. For example, R1 zoning says you should have a 40-yard setback from the front property line to the home. A lot of times that's not met. So rezoning and looking at our zoning code is definitely something that needs to be looked into further. And I know that the new administration and board will be discussing that as they lay out their agenda. But for right now, staff is recommending approval of this variance because of that, and Mr. Durso is here as well to answer any questions.
Okay, very good. Do we have any better visuals? Because it was kind of hard to see the surveys. Thank you.
So the red is where we're approved to, there's actually additional, there's the drawings.
Say that again, the red is where?
We get, that's the 8 feet, we're looking for additional 5 feet. So
Got
we're
it.
Going this way,
Okay,
and that's what we're looking for total.
okay, very good. Very
So
good.
it'll be going like from there to about halfway this way. So not even all of the patio.
Okay, excellent.
David, will you go to the next slide?
We'll start with you and then work our way down.
That's great, thank you. So you want to tell us a little bit about your project?
Yeah, so it's going to be an additional about 600 square feet. We're pretty much going to extend the family room to make it a sunroom too as well, and then extend the kitchen to an eating area. So it's going to be no additional plumbing, so it'll be additional HVAC, no second floor, and the vast majority of the addition is already going to be on concrete, so we're just pretty much going over the patio.
Very good, very good. And I don't think I mentioned it, but all the notices went out, correct? And we've got a survey. Yeah, the pictures will come around here in a second, but Meanwhile, here we go.
I would also mention the petitioner, it's not required, but the petitioner did get sign-offs from his neighbors saying that they are okay with it too.
Okay, so no, well, I did see we have some letters from neighbors approving,
Yeah.
and no neighbors have disapproved so far. Okay. Commissioners, any questions on this project?
So Andy, somewhere in the content, it discussed that if we approve this, it does open us up for other homeowners that'll look at this as a concession and leverage that. Is that true, or did I read that wrong?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would just say that I think his home is emblematic, or it's symbolic of an issue that we have with the village zoning map, and that a lot of homes are zoned as R1 that really ought not to be. So I don't know if I would put it as it opens this up. I think that it's something that the village needs to review and change. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay.
And this is a situation where the proposal isn't to add an addition that moves the house that reduces the side setback.
No,
It's not.
no.
It's just
gonna be
rear.
built
It's just
closer
rear.
to the neighbor. It's just moving back into the backyard
Correct.
area, where if we did our calculations, you would need to stay like 54 feet from the rear property line, and instead, the proposal is to be 49, somewhere between 49 and 50 feet from the rear property line. So we're talking about
It's
a few
5 feet,
Yeah.
and he backs up the Burr Ridge. Mentioned that too.
So when the staff approved this, did you folks discuss the unique circumstances, and was that primarily because of the zoning?
Well, so we haven't approved it yet. When staff was putting together our recommendation, the reason why we recommend approval primarily is because it is unique it's unique in that it doesn't meet it's already non-compliant, the home. So that's a unique circumstance
Okay.
that merits a variance.
We'll go over the variance standards here in a minute too, if you like, but are there any comments from neighbors, public out there regarding this project?
Then as far as there's no concerns about water displacement or?
No, in fact, like again, the vast majority of the additions could be going over pavement, and there's no more additional sinks or toilets or anything like that.
Okay, and as far as the water flow during rain,
No, it shouldn't be an issue at all.
and how did you determine that? Is that just intuitive or?
Intuitive, yeah. I mean, so our waterways, we have gutters that go down into that area, and there's no flooding right now on either side. So, in fact, we actually put a downspout that kicks the water to the front. With, I don't know what the proper term is, but we had a little water on east of us, so we eliminated that completely
Okay.
through a previous project.
And to get the building permit, you had to go, that was looked at too.
Or it will be. If he gets approval, then they'll come back for the permit process.
Yeah,
So,
okay. Right. Anybody else have any questions, comments? We can look at the statute regarding the variance standards. And the first condition is that to grant a variance would be the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. And I think we just discussed why this is unique, because the lot is smaller than the average R1. Would you all agree with that?
Yep.
The variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. The particular physical surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions of the specific property involved would bring a particular hardship upon the owner as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulation were to be carried out. People want big family rooms these days, I guess. The conditions upon which the petition for variation is based would not be applicable generally to other properties within the same zoning classifications. If you had a $20,000 square foot property, you probably wouldn't need this variance. The purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to make money out of the property. I would say that's true. The alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property. True. The granting of the variation will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the neighborhood in which the property is located. Neighbors seem to agree it's okay. The proposed variation will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property or substantially increase the danger of fire or otherwise endanger the public safety or substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. Okay. Any discussion on this? Do we all feel like we meet the conditions here? Okay. If there's no further discussion, we could move to recommend to the board that this petition be approved.
I move to approve the variance.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motions to recommend approval of this. All in favor signify. Should we do a roll call?
Yeah, I'll do a roll call.
Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Tantillo,
Aye.
Chair Costello,
Aye.
Commissioner Speska,
Aye.
Commissioner Lucente,
Aye.
and Commissioner Minchall.
Aye.
All
Okay,
right.
motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good luck with your project.
Oh. Your pictures.
Oh, you guys want to keep them,
You can put them on yours, perhaps.
Okay. So, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second to close the public
I'll
hearing?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to close the public hearing. On to our next hearing. This is a continuation of our car wash retail billboard development at 6991 Joliet Road. Again? Can I have a motion to open a public hearing? That's right.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to open the public hearing for the PUD development at 6991 Joliet Road for car wash, retail, and billboard development. Okay, Andy?
All right, yeah, I'll introduce this quickly, and then I'll hand it over to Nico for him to present. So we've had this development here before, but tonight is the official public hearing for when we sent out notices. As I stated at the last meeting, we typically send out notices to everyone within 250 feet. Legally, we're obligated to do 200. We always do 50 more just to be safe. But for this one, we did 500 because it's important. There's some multiple aspects to it, things like that. So we sent out notices to everyone within 500 feet, kind of like how we did with the other billboard as well, because this development does have a billboard. And I'll say right now with the billboard aspect, the village attorney is currently reviewing the exact mechanism through which approval of the billboard would be considered. For example, so to go into depth, the Fox Point billboard that was approved last month or 2 months, when that was approved, that's within a B6 zoning. B6 and B5 allow billboards as a special use. Since this is in the planned unit development, since it's also has underlying zoning of B3, we wanted to just make sure that everything is tight. So the village attorney is currently in the process of reviewing exactly what mechanism it would need to be approved by, and then he'll get us that information, which I will send to the commission as soon as I have it. But for tonight, I think we're all fairly familiar with this development. It's a car wash with a retail component and also a billboard. And with that, I will hand it over to Nico. Nico, I think the first presentation we have for you is the billboard presentation that you sent over. I know that the commission wanted some more information on that. Oh, and one other thing I just thought of is they're going to get us their traffic study probably sometime this week, which then we'll send that over to our village engineer to review, so for the commission to discuss and analyze, and we'll go from there. But yeah, David, could you bring up the billboard presentation, and I'll hand it over to you, Nico.
Okay,
Thanks,
and your
Andy.
name? Could you
Say that again.
could you state your name for us, please?
Nico Harvell.
Okay,
It's
welcome.
good to see you guys again. So because we didn't have any comments or many additional comments the last time we're presenting, what I really wanted to focus on this time was the billboard aspect of this. So what we did is we spoke with Fox Point, who presented for the Roofers Union, and they've provided the same slides that they provided for them, which include viewing angles, distance radii, and we can just kind of walk through these together. So this first slide shows what the expected viewing angle and throw is going to be for these billboards. It's in a very similar location to where the Roofers is, just on the other side of 294. Here's our radii. And like Andy was mentioning, I think it's right around 400 feet to the property line on the other side of Joliet Road. The maximum throw for these is 350 feet. And like they described when they were presenting for the roofers, it's never going to raise ambient light above 0.3 foot candelas.
Did you explore the opportunity to move it farther back from the last meeting?
Yeah, we did, and right now it looks like we're not going to be able to remove that existing detention and put that billboard there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that for certain, but that's what all signs are pointing to.
Okay.
Again, the same slide that they presented last time, just reiterating that these are very directional and they don't just cast light in any direction. It's just another viewing of our site plan for everyone that hasn't been here. At the very bottom of the screen, just above where it says detention, you can see the footprint of where we're proposing our billboard. As of right now, it's the furthest point from residential units that we've been able to place it. Just some dimensions on their billboard as well. Monopole construction. And then these last slides are viewing angles from 294.
And just to reiterate from the conversation that we had last time, I think you had said that the standards for content on this would remain the same as what Fox Point had presented to us before, with regards to like nothing that we would consider questionable advertising and such.
Absolutely.
And then this would also have the same standards where it would be completely shut off from, is it midnight to 6 a.m., I believe?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
What will the content be? Will it be for your personal, or would you be selling advertising?
So the way Fox Point described it, and this is mainly from their meeting when they were here with the roofers, is there's a rotation of slots on there. And depending on what the details were, I believe, Andy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when they presented on the roofers' behalf, I think they had discussed something about having the village taking a slot in there, and then the rest of them being available to whatever marketing agency they work with.
So, yeah, I think to clarify, Nico, so you would be selling advertising time on it?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and then the restrictions that we had with Fox Point, which we would require with them too, is basically no politically sensitive or sexual things like of that nature. So
We would reserve the right to call it if we were,
yeah.
and discuss if it was objectionable. Okay.
Are you selling the advertising, or you're outsourcing that to an agency?
So Fox Point's the one that actually sells it.
Okay.
So then you would be consistent in terms of your billboard versus the roofers because it's Fox Point managing the advertising sales, so there's some compatibility and consistency there.
Correct, and that was one of the major reasons we spoke with them, was that so that there would be some consistency and some synergy between the two billboards.
And in your opinion, anything that has already been agreed to and approved by the village, did you have any exceptions or questions for us in terms of what you want to do but can't do, or things to that effect?
Can you clarify?
So the rules of engagement of what that billboard represents have already been approved. Under those guidelines and what has been discussed, do you find anything that you'd like to change or enhance?
I mean, when we were here, everything that the village proposed to them and that they agreed with and the restrictions that were in place, we were under the impression when we started this journey that those would apply to us. And we're more than okay with all of those.
Right. Good.
We're okay with the choice of advertising content, the hours, everything else.
All right. And then just to reiterate, when asked the question last meeting, we asked the question, could you still move forward if for some reason the billboard had a no vote or the tollway said no? And your response was, yes, you'd still move forward.
So, yeah, if the tollway said no, because we're expecting to begin construction on the rest of the development before we get a final approval from them. At that point, we would still continue with our project. It's just if the village wasn't open to approving, that's when our development would no longer be something we'd be interested in pursuing.
Okay.
Andy, are we allowed to ask other questions other than the billboard?
Yeah, I was also going to say, I would say if any of the commissioners have another billboard question right now, why don't we do those? And then we have the second presentation for Nika to give as well, related to the rest of the development. So,
I guess just to clarify the status of the request for approval, if I'm recalling, it's the tollway, but IDOT is the one that for some reason actually administers that process. What are they considering? Like distance between billboards or potential driver distraction, those kind of things?
So it's very complicated. There's a lot of legislation, both state and federal, related to highway beautification, advertising, etc. They look at things like distance between billboards, but in our case, and I spoke with someone from the tollway asking him this about, these two billboards would be fairly close. So there's a 500-foot limitation, but it's only on billboards on the same side. So since they would be on opposite sides, there's no issue with that ruling. There may be other stuff that we are not versed on, but that's really IDOT's call, and they have a slew of their own regulations and requirements. So that's the kind of stuff they're looking at, though.
Any other questions? Okay, we can move along.
David, can you bring up the other presentation? And the commission has seen this before. I know, Nika, we've talked about it a lot before, but since tonight is the public hearing and we have people here who may comment on it or who are at least interested in it, will you just give us a overview rundown again of the development?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that aren't familiar with our project, up on the screen right now is a render of what we're expecting the property to look like. So our intention is to take this triangle in the PUD here and put an express tunnel car wash and a retail component with space for 2 different vendors and a small drive-through component. As of right now, we don't have any commitments or obligations for who would be in there. Our intention was to put something family-friendly, such as an ice cream store. But as we had talked about during the first meeting, we're open to any and all approved vendors that the staff's okay with. This is an outdated presentation.
This is not.
But
This is the most recent. Yeah, it's
that's
pretty.
fine.
Yeah.
So we have some small changes, and it's mostly just that our site has shrunk generally, but this is a top-down colorized view. It should give you guys a good idea of what the landscaping on this property might look like and what traffic circulation might look like, with an entrance to the retail component from Vine Street and Joliet Street, and an entrance to the car wash from the same. Towards the Tri-State Tollway, you'll have a self-service vacuum station. And then at the very bottom of the screen, furthest south, there is a small pet wash component as well. And as I described to the board, the commission, it's essentially just a self-service booth. If you imagine a self-service car wash, it's a small separate booth that's freestanding for those of you that have large animals or they're just particularly difficult to bathe at home. You could take them there and pay per use. On the south and the north sides of the retail component, we've added public gathering spaces, and they're actually slightly larger than what's depicted here, and that was per request of the Planning and Zoning Commission. In addition, going up and down Vine Street, we've added sidewalks so that pedestrian traffic from the plaza over to our development is accessible. I guess this is our updated site plan here. So there aren't many changes, but you can see kind of what I was describing here. And then I know that there was a question about the EV charging spaces being removed from this one. They're actually still depicted. They're in the parking spaces closest to the billboard and the parking spaces on the north side. This is just done by a different drafter, and his EV depiction is smaller. So if you take a closer look, they are still there. There's a total of 8. We have 4 right now at the car wash, and we have 4 at the retail component.
Looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Very nice.
I know there also was a comment about a pork chop curb. So if this is required to be a right in, right out, that's something that will automatically add in.
Yeah.
So depending on what IDOT's determination is and the results of the traffic study will determine whether or not we have that.
Otherwise, it would be your intention that someone could turn left from Joliet Road into your...
If there wasn't a concern with safety or impeding traffic flow,
Sure.
then yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Here's some architectural elevations and floor plans of what the car wash is expected to look like. Should give you a good idea of what the building envelope would look like. 2 different styles of masonry, metal gable roofs, windows in the clear stories. The floor plans at the top as well, but the only area that's really open to the public is a small lobby you would walk into if, you had an issue or you needed to speak with staff.
Which one of the 2 towers is going to be functional?
So we're not entirely sure we're going to be able to make that work. If it was, it would be the tower on the east side, so further away from Joliet Road, closest to Vine Street.
Sure. But then at night, they're both illuminated to some degree.
Yeah, there's going to be consistency between both towers. So whether or not they both turn off at a certain hour or if they're both faintly illuminated at all hours of the night, both towers will be consistent.
Understood.
This next slide is the same, but for the retail component, again, very similar construction. The floor plan won't give you too much of an idea of what it'll look like inside because until there's a tenant, it's just a vanilla box. At the bottom, there's our trash receptacles. They will match construction of both buildings and be constructed out of masonry. This is an expanded view of the floor plan for the retail component. And then here are some images of what the pet wash might look like. The commission had asked for these the last time we appeared. It's essentially just a tub, but the entire facility is a wet room, so if for whatever reason you weren't able to get your pet inside the wash basin, the entire space is able to be washed in.
Then you were going to add a trash receptacle of some portion for the dog waste.
Yes, there will be waste receptacles that'll also have, likely an attachment for small bags, things of that nature.
Understood.
What you would expect at a dog park.
Yeah.
And that wraps up this presentation.
So I noticed in the last packet you gave us, we didn't have a detailed landscape plan. Is that something that you'll be providing when you provide the traffic study?
When I had spoke with this about Andy, we had discussed that was something that the village engineer was going to have to approve.
The traffic study,
The traffic study,
Yeah.
but we had talked also about the landscaping, and I wasn't aware that there were any issues with the color site plan that we had. If there are, I can produce a full landscape plan with a schedule and have that at our next appearance.
yeah, so it's not the issue with that landscape thing. It's I think what we're looking for is like more specifics about this kind of planting here.
List of species and
Yeah,
numbers.
Yeah.
I could produce a planting schedule.
Great.
I'll
And
bring
then
that in for the next appearance.
Is there an included irrigation system to sustain those plantings on the site?
So right now, we don't have a determination of whether or not there's going to be. I've just recently completed a couple of other projects of similar size in LaGrange Park. And in that facility, we used drought-resistant species and grass. And a year later, it all looks phenomenal. So if that's a route we're able to take here and not have to use unnecessary water, I would prefer that. But if we're not able to achieve that, we would
Yeah, no, I
implement
think
an
that's a great
irrigation
idea. I
system.
think if you could give us a list of, preferential species and counts, that'd be really great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
For the Nava side that I represent, the water waste, is there plans to recondition that? Where does the water go? I mean, maybe just give us and some of the others in the audience kind of a background on what happens with that water.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if I have it on me, but I do have details on what the water reclamation system for the tunnel looks like. So the total water usage per car is going to be around 75 to 80 gallons. The water reclamation system that's used with this equipment, it's a gravity separation system, and it has underground storage tanks underneath. It passes it through a filter media, and it allows us to reduce all of the freshwater consumption between 55 and 65%.
That's
So
great.
what you would typically expect from a tunnel that doesn't have a water reclamation system, we are half to 65% of that.
Wow, that's great.
So the wastewater is retained, did I catch that correctly? And then it's pumped out through some outsourced vendor?
So as I understand it, after the water is used, let's say for a first wash, it's going to go into a basin, it'll pass through a filter, and then that water will be used with incoming water to wash. So you're getting a mix of both what was sprayed and what was in the tank, and that's how they cut the water down.
Gotcha. Okay.
If we get to the point where we're submitting a full set of construction documents, like I mentioned, the submittal from the equipment manufacturer will have a detailed list of how that system works.
Yeah, my understanding is that that's pretty typical for car washes. I mean, because it saves them money too. So
You mentioned Brookfield. Last meeting, we talked about getting some addresses of already existing car washes. Is Brookfield one of your properties?
The project I was referring to wasn't a car wash.
Okay.
It was a professional office space, something similar to what Dory had presented.
Okay. Yeah, I think giving us some choices of existing car wash locations, maybe a drive-by, maybe actually get the car wash, just to get a familiarity with what's happening other than just the visuals would be nice.
Absolutely, yeah. Andy, I think I forgot to send you those over, but I can get you, I do have a list of we did get a list together of similar car washes, the same tunnel style and similar construction style.
Thanks.
And I believe we touched on this at the last meeting, but just so other people can hear and maybe some of the audience members, for those houses that are closest to this development, what type of like noise would they expect to hear from this?
So this is what I had mentioned at the last Planning and Zoning Commission. The two noisiest components you would expect from a self-service or a express tunnel car wash like this are going to come from your central vacuum compressors, which, if you look at the site plan, they're the two rectangle boxes that terminate the parking spaces on the south side just below the tunnel. They're in blue. They match the color of the actual the car wash structure. That's where both of our compressors are housed. Both of those compressors come with a muffler that reduces the sound to, I believe it was 65 decibels. If you give me a moment, I have some information on what that's comparable to. Yes, I believe it was 65. A good comparison for that is 80 decibels, or wait a minute, what are we looking at here? 60 decibels is what you would expect a normal office to sound like. So within the masonry enclosures, we're not expecting sound to be louder than 65 decibels. Outside of the masonry enclosure, which the public won't have access to, that's going to be further reduced. The other loudest component you get are the blower dryers at the end of the tunnel. The way our car wash is orientated, the exit faces Vine Street. And with the equipment that we've selected for this tunnel, the blowers that we're going to be implementing at the end of the wash are designed so that they never increase sound outside of the car wash more than 30 decibels, they're never louder than 30 decibels at 30 feet away from the door. So 30 feet away from the furthest point on that car wash tunnel from the residential units, you will not have vacuum noise louder than 30 decibels. So essentially what that tells us is we're not expecting any of this development here to increase ambient noise as it exists today.
Thank you.
Very good.
And did we want to mention the type of plants? I know you're well-versed on that. You mentioned oak trees for the Dunkin' Donuts
Well, that's
property.
why I was kind of asking about the landscape plan and whether or not they had plans to irrigate, because those two things could have some impact on what was selected, which is why I asked if we could have a species list of what they were looking
Okay,
at.
good.
And just one last question for the, I guess specifically the car wash portion of the development. Is it a 24-hour operation, or what are the standard hours of operation on that?
So we would comply with whatever the village's recommendations are. I don't believe that this is going to be a 24-hour car wash because we won't staff at 24 hours. I'm not sure what the hours of operation are, but I'm expecting them to align with the village's standards. And Andy, I don't know if you have any further knowledge on that.
You know, I don't have anything off the top of my head. I don't think, I mean, we have quiet hours, but that's not necessarily for how late you can keep a business open. My expectation is we probably don't have anything on the book specifically related to that matter. So I think my recommendation would be to speak with the owner about what times you would like, and then let us know at the next meeting, and then we can discuss those hours. And I will double check just to make sure we don't have anything, but I think that's the way we should go about it.
Yeah, I'll double check. It was my impression, though, that we were expecting normal business operating hours.
Then a very small request, we asked this of Dunkin' Donuts, some type of Indian Head Park branding incorporated within your structure, whether it be some signage or whatever possibilities you might have without hurting your brand, but some mention of Indian Head Park in the design building exterior.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you notice, along Joliet Road, there's two call-outs. We have two monument signs that are proposed. One's in the flower bed just above the car wash, and one is on the north side, terminating that furthest row of parking spaces. Both of those monument signs, I think there's space for us to incorporate something with Indian Head Park. And I think that in the effort of keeping consistency between both, it's a conversation we could have with them. It might be a little goofy if we've got 3 Indian Head Park signs, but I think one really nice one would go a long way.
Okay.
Do you think next time perhaps you could provide rendered image of one of the monument signs that you're talking about, just so we can have a better visual of what that might look like?
It's something I could do if you felt it was necessary, but I think I might be able to get the point across by finding similar construction images and maybe getting a line diagram of what that would look like.
That'd be fine.
Andy, are you expecting us to vote on this tonight?
No, no.
Okay.
Staff is going to, we're just continue the public hearing to next
Okay.
month so that the traffic study can be completed and reviewed and reviewed by the village engineer. So, but so I think before that, if the commissioners have any more questions, to ask them now, and then we can go to public comments if we have any, and then wrap it up.
Just for curiosity, has the Dunkin' Donuts representative contacted you, and have you had any further discussions, or is that pretty much?
No, he has. We exchanged contact information, and he reached out asking if we had finalized any samples yet. And we're still working on some of the design elements for this building, so we don't have anything specific set, but we're keeping in contact, and they're in the loop on the decisions we're making.
Excellent, thanks.
I have a couple questions just to clarify the retail building that's kind of closest to the Joliet Vine corner. The site plan labels it as a 2,500 square foot building. The detailed floor plan looks like it's actually smaller than that. It looks like the way you're going to lay it out, it will be set up for a drive-through with the presumption that whatever business you find to lease that space is going to want to drive through. But you indicated you don't have a specific tenant in mind yet for it?
We don't have a specific tenant in mind yet. When we had first gone through this and we were working with Andy, we had let him know that as of right now, because we don't have any commitments or obligations to anyone, we are very open to any and all vendors that the village is approved of. And yes, our initial site plan had this retail building at 2,500 square feet. That size has been reduced after we learned of the land loss that was taken by the Tri-State Tollway.
Okay.
So the square footages on this screen are correct. And yes, there is a drive-through component that if there were 2 tenants in there would only apply to one of them.
All right. The way that it's laid out, it looks like, I mean, there's 2 toilet rooms. There's 1 mechanical room. It's almost set up in such a way that it would be pretty difficult for there to be 2 separate tenants
So
in there.
how we have this
right?
depicted right now is with no detail on the inside.
Right.
The term we like to use to describe this is just a vanilla box, because the interior build-out would be subject to whatever tenants' needs there are. So it's depicted right now with the mechanical room separated and, on either sides of the bath, or just 1 mechanical room, 2 bathrooms there. But depending on what tenants we had in there, you could imagine a partition that would split this building in half, and each side would have restrooms, each side would have their own mechanical room, and so on.
Okay, so your intention would be to build it out, completely finish it out on the exterior with the exception of signage, and then determine later whether it was going to be 1, larger restaurant-type use or 2 smaller
Correct. So
cafes or something like that. It
what we
be-
would start
you'd have the
doing is gauging
flexibility.
interest on who would want to be in here, make sure the village was all right with it. And then once there was a lease agreement put in place, the details of the build out would be handled then, depending on what kind of finishes they want inside, if for some reason there's partitions going in, things of that nature, what their kitchen's going to look like, if they have one.
Okay, and it looks like the way it's laid out, you have the ability, if it were two businesses, for each of them to have their own sort of little outdoor seating area or something, like a small patio area
Yes.
with some tables outside or something like that. You could accommodate that for two separate businesses if they both wanted that.
Correct, yeah. Our latest site plan, we've got outdoor space on both the north and the south side of that building. And I don't know for sure, but I believe both patios have space for somewhere between, 4 and then I think 7 on the other large round tables. You could sit around with
Right.
4 or 5 people.
Okay. I'm looking at the east elevation that's drawn here. Maybe I'm getting too far into the weeds because this may still be flexible, but for instance, the side that's going to face Vine Street is the side that shows basically just a service door. So there would be some flexibility for like where the big windows and the views into the building and the seating areas would be placed potentially, depending on what the needs of the tenants are going to be.
Absolutely. And then, as we finalize our construction documents, as we have a permit set of plans that we're producing, that's where we'll really get into all of the elements. Our best interest is to beautify the property as much as possible. So a singular service door, while it may have made sense when we were just drafting up these plans, likely wouldn't be what the finished product would be. I would imagine it'd be either additional storefront or something of that nature.
Okay, I know, there are some retail buildings like this where the default is to put in the large windows, but then sometimes based on the interior layout, it's not really going to be a window, but you just use it, put some kind of screening image or something on it so that it looks transparent, but it might be the kitchen right behind it or something. But,
Yeah.
but from an outward appearance, it looks open and like there's a lot of windows and it becomes more flexible that way, so, okay. And can you just clarify, I mentioned something about an occupiable second story tower or something. I think I must have missed something because I was not at the last meeting,
So
what that's about.
That conversation was pertaining to the car wash. The only interior space that we have right now is a very small lobby, and that's at the bottom right corner of where the floor plan is, the way it's orientated. Our intention was, if it was possible, and it's something that we're still exploring with our architect, to be able to add some sort of a mezzanine up top that would be able to house an owner's office, a small break room, place to do employee training, things of that nature. So it wouldn't change public access to the inside of it, but just trying to maximize space for ownership and operation.
But that's another one where outwardly they'll look the same.
Correct.
They'll be lit up at night.
Yes,
in
it wouldn't, visually from the
attractive way.
outside, it wouldn't impede anything.
Okay.
On the consistency side, Dunkin' Donuts is putting, or planting vines in front of their waste container structures. And I know you said it's masonry. Is there a possibility of being consistent with what Dunkin' Donuts is doing, or do you have other plans to kind of hide that area?
So how we have it, and we have a depiction here. If you look at the bottom left of this screen, our refuse enclosures are masonry construction that is almost going to match, if not perfectly match, our building.
Okay.
Where we're going to have the more decorative style on the bottom and then a secondary color on top to accent it. Typically, and in my opinion, I think that looks the nicest. If I remember, I believe they were forced to use some type of screening that wasn't masonry for their enclosures, and I think the vines were some measure to try and add additional screening. if it's not something that we need to do, I think the masonry would look better, but I wouldn't say we're closed to adding more vegetation.
Okay.
Any other questions? Andy, do we get out of the public hearing before we go to public comments?
No, public comments are part of the public hearing, yeah. And this is only public comments specifically related to this development, yeah.
Right. Okay, are there any audience members that would like to have any, if you have any questions or comments? You can step forward and identify yourself.
And would you just state your name and address, please?
Barb Prang.
Up here, please.
Barb Prang, 6616 Osceola Trail. We're directly across the street from this. So we have concerns, yes, about noise. Lighting. Lighting is a big thing. Our living room, dining room looks out to this, our patio. It's already bad enough with the parking lot where Wolf's Head Inn is with those lights. The way they shine, it's hard to even sit in our patio in the evening without that. I mean, with the lights. And if, when the trees are up, it's better, but, in fall, winter, it's bad. And I was also assumed they're going to take down those dead trees. I brought it up last year with the shed thing, but they're gonna fall and kill somebody sometime. So anyway, getting back to this, lighting is a big thing. Is there going to be a sign? Is there going to be a sign outside that's going to be lit up? Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know about the billboard really, but is the billboard going to be just facing out? The light's going to be facing out to the tollway, or are we going to be able to see it?
So, Nico, I think Nico kind of explained it earlier, but the tollway, it would be facing towards the tollway.
So we won't see any of those lights?
Not directly, no.
Okay.
That's the understanding.
And how about signage on Joliet Road for these businesses?
In that case, all their signs would have to meet the village sign code, lumen requirements, which the village actually just put into place a couple months ago. So.
But does that mean they're going to be on 24 hours? Are they going to be turned off at night?
They have to be turned off when the business is not open.
Okay. And then the sound study is coming out next month? Is that what you were, like the traffic sound? I thought you were talking about a traffic sound study.
So the traffic study will be next month. He kind of referenced to the sound some tonight, but we can get a more, I'll ask you right now if for next month, if we can get some more numbers about the sound in writing, and we can just go over it one more time.
All right. So I'm just going to throw this out there. We have this wooden fence that we're all, each one of the property owners is responsible for. So we have to pay for that. It doesn't do anything as far as really sound goes. Is there any way that the village can put up a better fence for us? Higher, maybe like one of those concrete things that they use on the tollway for our sound?
My recommendation would be to send me an email, and I'll give you my email afterwards, or send in a public comment to the Board of Trustees, because that decision would really be a board level. It'd have to be a board level discussion and decision. But I'll talk to you after the meeting and get your info, and we can communicate there.
Okay, because right now, we all have like the picket fences, but some of them, a couple of, now we have different kinds of fences because they weren't able to replace it with the same type of picket. So, I know you guys all want conformity, so I'm just kind of wondering like how that works. So, okay, so we'll talk after that, but I do have concerns about the noise and the lighting.
Andy, if I could just address a comment that this resident, or question that this resident just asked. And sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but you asked, will you in your residence be able to see the lit up billboard, I think was your question.
Well, yeah, I want to know if we could, if we would be able to see that. I mean, it was bad enough. I mean, we went through 2 years of
No,
not having any sign
I
wall,
completely understand. And
you know,
so I
I
think,
just don't want any more.
yeah, I think the answer that you initially got was no. Nico, can you confirm, will she not be able to see the billboard at all from her house?
So we pull up that.
Nico, will you come speak in the microphone just so anyone watching on online can hear?
And like, I realize your demonstration about the foot candelas and the foot distance away from the sign, but as she's sitting in her backyard, will she see absolutely no light when there is no foliage on those trees?
Can you pull up the initial presentation?
Yeah, I'll show you where our house is.
Okay.
And I have the neighbors. Boom, boom, boom here. Okay. So our house is right there. Jose's is there, Rhonda's is there, and they're all here tonight. So we're at that boom, 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 right there.
So the best way I can describe this, and this is directly from the manufacturer, our billboard's going to be facing or sitting on top of this pole. Both signs are going to be angled towards 294 as much as possible. It's to no benefit for them, to the village, to us, to anyone, if this is facing residential units. The maximum distance that this billboard will illuminate is going to be out to 350 feet. This 450-foot ring or 400-foot ring is just at the edge of Joliet Road. So will you be able to, is there going to be an angle from your window that sees the billboard? You're likely going to be able to see it, whether it's the back side, the edge of it, the front of it. I'm not 100% sure, but what I do know is that it's not going to raise ambient light in your house. It won't be a bright light that's making your living room brighter.
And are you gonna have signs on Joliet Road? Like, how about if they did like the signs, like, you know how some towns, you can't have like high signs, you have to have signs that are lower? How about something like that, where they can have it?
Yes.
What kind of signs are you talking about?
Well, the sign, when people are going down the road, they're gonna, like, you have a sign, right? Like Dunkin' Donuts, like, or whoever, you have a, you know, they'll have a big sign out there. You know, well, can they have like a sign that's on the ground? So we aren't gonna be looking out, or I'm not gonna be looking out my living room window and having to see a sign that says, you know, the XYZ car wash.
Like, does Wolf said offend you where that's at?
Oh, that thing I would, if I had a shotgun and could shoot it out, I would. Because at night, it is boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's just glaring at us. And you know what, I can't, I won't be shooting it out. But I'm just, especially now that I've said it out loud, right?
No, I understand.
But I mean, it's so irritating because you can't sit out there. It's like you need sunglasses. Like I need to shade it sometimes.
And then, Nico, were you planning on those, I don't know, the taller portions of your building to remain lit all through the night?
So I can speak to kind of all your lighting questions here. Can we pull up the other presentation?
So will there be any signs on Joliet Road?
Yeah, so on this render, the only sign that you can see that's going to be visible right now is we have Lux Wash, which is over the entrance to the tunnel. Now that style of sign is going to be one that's backlit. So it's not going to be something like Wolf Set In that's glaring out. I live just down Wolf Road. I'm off 72nd Street, so I grew up in the area, and I know the sign that you're talking about. Our building signs are not going to be like that. It's going to be the same thing with the building signs that are facing or on the tenants. It's our preference to have them be something that's backlit, so that you have the shape of the letter that's darker, and then there's almost a halo or a glow that comes from behind the sign. The two monument signs that we have along Joliet Road are going to be monument signs. And if you're not familiar with what that term is, it's a small sign, typically a rectangle, that's typically somewhere, I would say, 4 feet high. Andy, would you agree with that? It's pretty standard. It'd be around 4 feet high, masonry, and depending on what it says, I'm not sure if we're going to have something on there that's going to say Village of Indian Head Park. There's also going to be an advertisement for, this site, but it'll be low.
It's on the ground.
It's
from the ground.
correct. It sits on the ground.
Like the one that's up there now, that's on a pole with a sign.
Correct. We won't have any of those. There will be no pole signs on this. All on the floor.
What about the upper level of those tall buildings? That'll be right in our living room.
So the upper level of these taller buildings aren't actually going to be occupiable spaces, with the exception of potentially the one furthest from you. Now, these towers, if they're illuminated at night, will be a soft ambient glow, something that looks appealing. But that's also not something that is a requirement. If for whatever reason that causes an issue, I don't think it's to anyone's benefit to keep them on. Especially, I mean, I would say that if anything, it should conform with what the village sign requirements are. So if your sign lights are turning off at 10 or whatever time that is, there wouldn't be an issue with turning those off as well. They won't be directly lit. And when the photometric plan for this property is designed, it's going to be designed to be as efficient with as minimal light as possible. Our intention is to light the parking lot safely and to the requirements of the village and anyone else without putting any additional light.
Okay, so the parking lot lights are going to be on, they're going to have to be on all night, right, because for safety?
So what we've typically been doing with our construction, and Andy, I'm not sure if you guys have your parking lot lights on all night in the village.
We do.
Sure it gets reduced.
Yes, yeah. So the village does, and then so does the ones at the Indian Head Plaza. I believe those are on all night.
So at night, our lighting will be the minimum requirement of the village. We will have our parking lot lit as minimally as the village will allow us to have it lit. And then as far as how the parking lot's lit, typically what we've been doing on construction projects of similar size or similar construction style is we go with wall packs. So the light actually sits against the building and it shines downward. And that emits light around. So you don't have, a pole light, for example. The only time that those would ever be implemented would be if, for whatever reason, we couldn't reach the minimum lighting requirements with just wall packs. If that clarifies it all.
You're saying we won't see the lights shine at all, and I find that hard to believe.
I'm not saying you won't see the light shine at all. What I am saying is it's in my best interest to make sure you see as little light as possible, because my goal is to make sure that I have as little unnecessary light on this project as possible. I think it's a little bit of a different situation with places like Wolf's Head and Driftwood, where you're attracting a nightlife, you want your signs to be bright and visible. Here, there's no benefit to that. This is going to be a retail component in Indian Head Park, which we're a very sleepy town here. It's not going to be something that has a nightlife component. Our intention is to put something that's family friendly in the retail spaces. And then in the car wash, we're not, there's no business that we're trying to attract at night. If that helps answer.
Is there anyone else with a public comment? I would ask that you come up and we can record you for the record.
Okay, yes.
One man, 6458 Black Hawk Trail. Is there any area, a unit like this operating in the area within a reasonable distance where it could be observed for sound and general conditions?
So the examples that I know of this car wash, of similar style with similar equipment, are in Indiana. And I do have a list of what I have found to be the most similar construction, and I will provide that to Andy this week, and I'm sure he'll be able to make that available to you as well. And I know that there were some additional comments brought up about the sound. If it's something that would help, I can see about obtaining some of these spec sheets and these technical sheets that we would submit during our permit process for these sound emitting noises, so that maybe it would provide some more reassurance that the equipment we've selected is as quiet as possible.
I think that's a good idea, Nico.
If that would work.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Thank you, Nico.
Continue the public hearing.
Continue the public hearing, sorry, yeah. Till next month?
Yeah, till the next meeting.
Anybody?
I'll make
Motion?
a motion to continue the public hearing to the June Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Okay, and second?
I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. No more business, or do we have anything?
Technically, if someone has public comments, not just general public comments, they could go right now.
Okay, does anybody have anything for the group here tonight? Okay, thank you all for coming, by the way. It's nice to see you here. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And second?
Second.
Oh, we'll say goodbye to Danielle tonight. Yay.
Thank you, everybody.
No, not yay that you're leaving, yay that you're going forward, moving up.
Thank you.
Okay, meeting adjourned. You guys too.